If you're like me, you're probably looking forward to 2023 and wondering what the next mega role-playing game will be. And I have the answer for you. It's Starfield, the first new intellectual property developed by Bethesda Game Studios in 25 years. Starfield is a hotly anticipated AAA single-player action role-playing game which takes place across the vastness of space. Originally scheduled to release in November of 2022, the game has been delayed till somewhere in the first half of 2023. The game will be released exclusively on Xbox Series X and S and Microsoft Windows PC. Bethesda has been sharing a closer look at Starfield in some interviews with Todd Howard and gameplay trailers earlier this year. Hello, I'm Deltia from Starfield Guides, and in this video, I'm going to be sharing 10 things you must know about Starfield following interviews and gameplay trailers of this year. Let's get started with number 10, Character Creator. Although various alien races, droids, and robots were shown in a glimpse of gameplay during Xbox Bethesda Showcase in 2022, as far as we know, character customization will be focused on humans only. Underneath the Biometric ID tab, you'll find a selection of 14 character presets. Each of these models has personal record number, and once selected, they can be modified further under the Body and Face tabs. The Body tab displays a circular grid with 3 fixed points of muscular, thin, and heavy. Changing the balance of the grid with the dots position, you can define your character's musculature, weight, and body structure. Next is the face, where we weren't shown many details, but it appears players will use the typical sliders to adjust complexion, eyes, head shape, hair, and hair color. Game director Todd Howard has said that character customization in Starfield will be their most flexible yet, and the next 2 tabs suggest that Bethesda is going the extra mile to make each character and playthrough unique. You will be able to give your character unique traits and backgrounds that influence your character performance and attributes, allowing for even more replayability. More on that later, but up next is number 9, how long is the game? So how long exactly is Starfield? According to Todd Howard, we have over 200,000 lines of dialogue, and that's a lot of handcrafted content. We don't know the exact length of the main story in Starfield, however, we have some theories based on what Todd Howard has shared in the last few months. The amount of dialogue is more than double Skyrim and well above Fallout 4, while the main bulk of planets are randomly generated. For that amount of dialogue, questing, and interaction, the main hub cities must be beaming with life, choices, and options to complete the story. Howard gives an estimate on the length of the main story.
But if our previous ones, if we aimed for, let's say, a 25-hour main quest, this one might be in the 30s, maybe 40 just for the main quest.
With 30 to 40 hours of main story quests, you're going to get a lot more main story than other previous Bethesda titles. Bethesda also has a knack for morally gray storytelling. Their best writing comes when you need to make a decision on a faction, a quest, or something where there really is no right answer. Sometimes, just like in life, you need to go with your gut. Unlike real life, you can go back and see how those decisions play out, making a different choice. Next up is something we've already spoken about, but let's get into a little bit more detail, and that's number 8, background and traits. Background and traits are also tabs in character creation, but they are a couple of new, non-standard additions which provide a lot more depth to your character's backstory. In the background tab, you can choose one from a total of 20 possible origin stories, with potential occupations such as a bounty hunter, chef, diplomat, gangster, and ronin. Whatever one you choose, it will determine your 3 starting skills and how the game environment and NPC characters will react and interact with your character. In the traits tab, players will further refine their character by selecting up to 3 attributes to a wide list. Each one of these provides unique advantages and disadvantages. We don't know exactly how all of these traits might influence gameplay, but one example we do have is Kid Stuff trait. Choose this and your character will be able to visit their living parents in-game. The disadvantage being that 10% of all your money earned will automatically be deducted and sent to them. Things like this can open up exclusive dialogue options and maybe even special quests or events. Moving on to number 7, and that's story and setting. Starfield's story takes place in the year 2330, a distant but still imaginable future where humanity has developed settlements on other planets. 20 years prior to the start of the game, United Colonies went to war with their primary rival for power, the Free Star Collective. Now that the colony wars have finally ended, the peace between these two factions is an uneasy one. In addition, the pirates of the Crimson Fleet are aggressively expanding their foothold in the system where they've never been seen before. After arriving in the United Colonies' capital city, New Atlantis, your character will come into contact with an organization called Constellation. This group describes themselves as the last group of space explorers, and their members are committed to unlocking the mysteries of the galaxy. They are in the process of collecting the scattered pieces of an alien artifact in order to fully assemble it, and when the player character discovers their own relic, the member of the constellation eagerly welcomes them in the group. This kicks off the main story quest of the game. Can the complex artifact answer some of humanity's biggest questions? Who are we? Why are we here? And what's next for us? Starfield will have many of the traditional Bethesda gameplay hallmarks. A robust main story and side quests and elaborate character creation are almost a given, but where Starfield really breaks the mold is the extraordinary amount of exploration it offers. Speaking of exploration, that's number 6. Bethesda shocked many when they announced that there would be over 1,000 planets in Starfield where the player can explore and investigate. According to game director Todd Howard, while there is plenty of handcrafting that will go into Starfield, creating over 1,000 planets wouldn't be possible for human developers alone. Therefore, many planets will be procedurally generated, an automatic technology which Bethesda has been working on improving since Skyrim. But what does 1,000 planets to explore really mean? Only certain restricted points on the surface, a larger city, or smaller settlements here and there? No, it means the whole planet, not just a small piece is available. If this is going to be Skyrim in space, imagine Skyrim 1,000 times bigger. But how are you going to get to these planets? Well, in starships, of course, and that's number 5. Starships is number 5, and what's most exciting about this is they're not just static modes of transportation. Instead, starships will be a vital part of gameplay. To leave any planet and travel to another, you have to quite literally fly through space. We don't know exactly how the player finds, earns, or buys a starship, but we know it's a basic mode of travel, especially early on and later in the game, and you're probably going to have to upgrade the system. And when you make these upgrades, keep in mind that the vastness of space and the depth are massive. And these aren't just empty neutral zones in Starfield. When you're traveling through space, you'll encounter space pirates, corporation, and military groups, some of which are hostile to you, and you'll have to engage in space combat. You can board or be boarded. There's a lot of combat, gameplay, and nuance just in the starship mechanics alone. Also, it is known that you won't be able to land on the planet directly, but this will be a process or a cut screen, so it'll be done through that system rather than players actually traveling down to the surface themselves. And who will you meet once you arrive at your destination? Maybe someone from an opposing faction? Well, let's introduce you to them in topic number 4. Number 4, that's factions. The United Colony are the largest military and political power in the settled system. Based out of their capital city, New Atlantis, the United Colony strive to represent the idealized version of Space Republic, and this is reflected in their strong cosmopolitan society. The Freestar Collective is the other major power in the settled system and is a loose confederation of 3 different star systems unified in their dedication to personal freedoms and individuality. And last but certainly not least, you have the Crimson Fleet, which is a loose alliance of individual pirate captains who choose to operate together under the Jolly Rogers banner. Regardless of who you side with, there will be a lot to explore that will lead to crafting and research, and that's number 3. Number 3, crafting and research has always been an integral part of any Bethesda title, granting the player the ability to use collected resources to create powerful weapons or even build and furnish homes. One of the first shots of the gameplay in the Starfield trailer shows the player collecting iron using a laser extractor. The iron is automatically added to the inventory after a short harvesting animation. It's reasonable to assume here that this is how it'll work for other kinds of resource harvesting, whether the material be minerals, meta, flora, or fauna. An additional element to the crafting in Starfield is the ability to run research projects. Research will likely be a necessity before you can craft additional improved items. There are 5 main areas of research: pharmacology, food and drink, outpost development, equipment, and weaponry. Within these categories, the player can have simultaneous projects being worked on together. And one of the major categories for research and development we've talked about is outpost development. So let's show you what those look like in number 2. Number 2, outposts, one of the major research categories I mentioned previously. Think of outpost as Starfield housing system. Unlike Skyrim housing, which is mostly aesthetic, the outposts in Starfield are clearly meant to serve larger functions, much more like the settlements do in the Fallout series. Outposts will likely serve as a safe base and a landing site where the player crew can rest, repair, and refuel before traveling out to space again. The Bethesda footage revealed some of the outpost construction, and it has some unique gameplay features, specifically atmospheric conditions like oxygen, temperature, and even gravity. You'll have materials on the planet to consider before settling, and even a military hab shown from a still image on the preview. That leads me to believe that there's some sort of mechanic just like Fallout 4 where randomly your settlements, or in this game outposts, can be attacked and must be defended. Howard also showed that you can hire NPCs to defend and run your settlements. Not much else was shown on this system, but it has has a lot of mechanics and a lot of detail, and I'm excited for it. Let's move on to what I'm most excited about and people probably are most interested in, and that's combat, number one. Number one, combat. Game director Todd Howard has described Starfield as, well, Skyrim in space, but the Elder Scrolls has never really seen any gunplay or laser blasters. So what will Starfield combat be like? Will it be RPGs with guns or more like a legit shooter? When it comes to gameplay's combat, a more obvious Bethesda title to make comparisons to Starfield will be the Fallout series. Fallout games have often included a system called VATS, the key feature being that the player could use it to stop time, slow down time, and assist the player with their aim. So far what we've seen in the Starfield gameplay reveal is somewhat of a similar system to VATS, where it slows down the time of the gameplay and allows the players to swap weapons. However, this is important, we do not see this effect completely stop enemy movement or assist the player in aiming. In this case, it will give the game more of a fast-paced shooter feel rather than a typical Fallout game. Other elements of combat we've seen so far are crouching and sneaking, along with the ability to use grenades. A really exciting sci-fi element shown in the reveal trailer is boost jumps the player can make. Using the jetpack, you can boost up into space, and it adds a layer of verticality to the gameplay and the combat, and there's going to be all sorts of tactical advantages using this system. Overall, the combat does look snappier and sharper than what we've seen in Fallout series. However, I believe that Todd Howard chose to compare Starfield more directly to Skyrim for a reason. Skyrim is about exploring and adventuring. The combat is important as well as fun, but for the most part, players aren't really interested in that. They're interested in gameplay and stories. I think Starfield's focus will reflect this, likely prioritizing exploration above all else. Look, the scale and scope of Starfield is unlike anything Bethesda fans have seen the studio do before. We plan on covering this game on this YouTube channel as well as our websites. Check out starfieldguides.com for all the latest guides, builds, and what will eventually be tier list on Starfield. Check out Starfield Countdown, and when we get the official release of the date of the game, we'll be posting it there with the clock counting down. And what I think fans will absolutely love, starfieldbuilder.com, a website, once we know more about the customization and variation of the builds, that will allow you to make your own fully customized builds and spit out a link so you can share with your friends. Make sure to check the link in the description below and hit that like button if you got something out of this video. I'm Deltia from starfieldguides.com, and I appreciate you watching.